Did you seriously think you could just move your parents into our house without even asking me, Christopher? I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. Christopher, my husband of 5 years, looked up from his laptop, his face wearing that infuriating smirk I had come to despise. Oh, Ava, stop being so dramatic. It's not a big deal. And besides, it's only temporary, he replied casually, as if I didn't have a say in the matter. And let's be honest, it's not like you can stop it. His words felt like a slap. This wasn't just any house, it was my house. The charming 2-story home, tucked away in a peaceful suburb, had been passed down to me by my grandparents. It was the place where I dreamed of raising our 2-year-old son, Robert, far away from the toxic grip of Christopher's controlling parents. You do remember this house is in my name, right? I shot back, my hands trembling as they balled into fists at my sides. My voice was firm, but inside, I felt an overwhelming mix of anger and sadness. For the first time in years, I questioned how well I truly knew the man I had married. Christopher's expression flickered for a moment, his smirk faltering before returning as a shadow of its former self. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, Robert toddled into the room, his chubby little hands reaching up toward me with a wide grin. Forcing a smile, I scooped him up, kissed his forehead, and held him close. At least Robert didn't understand the tension suffocating the room. Christopher, this is not okay, I said, trying to steady my voice as Robert's tiny fingers played with my necklace. Your parents have never respected me or our space. Why are you doing this now? They're family, Ava, Christopher replied with a dismissive shrug, not even looking up from his laptop. You wouldn't understand. That word, family, mocked me. My family, who owned a small but beloved coffee shop in town, had always been my safe haven. They were warm, loving, and supportive, everything Christopher's parents were not. His mother, Lily, and father, Ethan, had been overbearing and dismissive since the day I met them. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang, cutting through the tension like a knife. My stomach sank as I peered through the peephole. There they were, Christopher's parents, standing on the porch with their suitcases, ready to invade our lives. Fine, I hissed, my voice low enough so Robert wouldn't hear. Let them in. But this isn't over. Handing Robert to Christopher, I opened the door. Lily swept past me without so much as a greeting, her perfume overpowering the fresh scent of the house. Ethan followed, his usual stern expression making it clear he barely acknowledged my existence, just as he had since our wedding day. In the following days, my worst fears became reality. Lily began asserting control over every aspect of my home. She rearranged my kitchen without asking, criticized my parenting at every turn, and acted as though she owned the place. This cereal isn't healthy for Robert, she remarked one morning, watching me prepare breakfast for my son. In our house, we believed in proper nutrition. You should really learn. It's just cereal, I replied, my voice strained as I fought back the urge to snap. Robert is perfectly fine. Lily shook her head with a look of disappointment, as if I had committed some grave sin. You're too lenient. No wonder he doesn't sleep through the night. That evening, I tucked Robert into bed, humming softly to soothe him, when Lily barged in uninvited. You're still struggling to get him to sleep, she said, her tone dripping with judgment. Clearly you're doing something wrong. I stared at her, my patience wearing thin. I'm doing the best I can, I replied, my voice shaking with barely contained anger. Well, maybe if you had a proper job, you'd have some structure in your life, she shot back with a cold smile. This stay-at-home routine clearly isn't working for you. I felt a surge of anger rise within me. This is my house, Lily. You're a guest here, don't forget that. She laughed, her tone sharp and dismissive. Oh dear. Christopher never mentioned how delusional you are. This is his house too, and as his mother, I have every right to be here. The next morning, I reached my breaking point when I found Lily in Robert's room, rifling through his drawers. What are you doing? I demanded, my voice trembling with anger. Organizing. This room is a mess, she replied nonchalantly, not even bothering to look up. That's it, I said, my voice rising as I struggled to stay calm. I want you out of my house. Now. Lily finally turned to face me, her expression a mix of mock surprise and disdain. Your house, she sneered. Sweetheart, This is Christopher's house too. And he wants us here. I stormed out of the room, my thoughts racing. Christopher's betrayal and Lily's arrogance were unbearable. This was supposed to be my safe space, my sanctuary, and it had been turned into a battleground. That night, as I lay awake in bed, I made a decision. I was done being their doormat. If they thought they could walk all over me, they were in for a rude awakening. I didn't know how, but I was going to take back control of my home, my life, and my future. The fight was just beginning, but for the first time in years, I felt ready to stand my ground. I wasn't going to let them push me around anymore. It was time to stand my ground and take control of my life. The next morning, I picked up my phone and called my brother, Joseph. He had always been my confidant and the person I could rely on when everything felt like it was falling apart. "They're taking over my life, Joseph," I confessed, my voice trembling as tears threatened to spill. "I can't do this anymore. I feel like I don't even belong in my own home." Joseph's voice was steady and reassuring as always. "Ava, you need to stand up for yourself. Don't let them bully you like this. This is your house, your space. You have every right to demand respect." His words lit a spark within me. He was right. I had been letting them walk all over me for too long. It was time to fight back. This time, I decided, I wouldn't approach the situation blindly. I needed to gather my thoughts and prepare for the confrontation. Over the next few days, I made a list of all the ways Lily had overstepped. The constant criticisms, her intrusion into Robert's routines, her dismissive comments about my parenting, and even her rearranging my kitchen without asking. With each item I added, my determination grew. Finally, the day of the confrontation arrived. I waited until Lily and Christopher were sitting in the living room, chatting as if nothing was wrong. My heart raced, but I forced myself to stay calm as I stepped into the room. "We need to talk now," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. Christopher looked up from his phone, surprised by my tone. "What's this about, Ava?" I took a deep breath. "It's about your parents, Christopher. Their constant interference, their complete disregard for my boundaries. It has to stop. Today." Lily let out a loud scoff, crossing her arms. "This is ridiculous. We're just trying to help." "Help!" I shot back, my voice rising. "You're not helping. You're undermining me at every turn, treating me like a stranger in my own home. This is supposed to be a place of peace for my son and me, but you've turned it into a battleground." Christopher shifted uncomfortably on the couch, clearly not expecting me to confront him like this. "Ava, they're my parents. We can't just ask them to leave." I locked eyes with him, my tone unwavering. "No, Christopher. They're guests in my home, and they've overstayed their welcome. Either they leave or I do. And I'm taking Robert with me." The room went silent, my ultimatum hanging heavy in the air. Christopher's face paled as he realized I wasn't bluffing. Lily, however, was less convinced. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, her usual haughty expression cracking. I met her gaze without flinching. "Watch me." That night, Lily and Ethan packed their bags. As they walked out the door, Lily turned to give me one last venomous glare. "You'll regret this, Ava." But as the door closed behind them, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. The house was mine again, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. The following days were surprisingly quiet. Christopher, however, became distant, his interactions with me cold and minimal. It was as if he blamed me for the entire ordeal, even though his parents had been the problem. Still, I found comfort in the peace of my reclaimed home and the sound of Robert's laughter as he played freely again. One evening, as I was tidying up while Robert stacked his building blocks, Christopher spoke up unexpectedly. "I've got a business trip coming up. I'll be gone for a few weeks." His tone was flat, almost indifferent. I could tell our strained relationship had taken a back seat to his career. "Fine," I replied curtly, barely able to hide my relief at the prospect of his absence. After Christopher left, the house felt different. It felt lighter, freer. I began undoing all the changes Lily had made, restoring my home to the way I loved it. Each small victory felt like a step toward reclaiming not just my space but my confidence and independence as well. But then, something happened that I hadn't anticipated. While cleaning one evening, I noticed Christopher's laptop sitting open on the kitchen counter. At first, I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. As I glanced at the screen, I froze. There, in plain sight, were emails that revealed an affair. Christopher had been unfaithful, and it wasn't just a one-time mistake. It had been going on for months. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Anger, hurt, and betrayal swept over me in waves. The man I had once loved and trusted had not only allowed his parents to walk all over me, but had also been living a double life. This was the final straw. I closed the laptop and sat down, my mind racing. I couldn't let this go. Christopher had broken every promise, every vow, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I began planning my next steps, each one carefully calculated. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. I explained everything. The intrusion of his parents, the emotional toll, and now the affair. Together, we began the process of filing for divorce and securing my financial standing. Next, I contacted a real estate agent. I want to sell the house quickly and quietly, I told her, my voice firm. She hesitated. Ava, are you sure? This is a big decision. I've never been more certain of anything, I replied. This house had been my sanctuary once, but now it was a reminder of everything I had endured. I needed a fresh start, somewhere Robert and I could build a life free from Christopher's betrayal and his family's toxicity. Offers came in quickly, and with each one, I felt a sense of liberation. The thought of Christopher returning to find the house sold and his control over my life gone brought me a bittersweet satisfaction. For the first time in years, I felt strong. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was fighting back, and I was winning. After Christopher left, I turned to the one place I knew I could find solace, my family. Reconnecting with them felt like a lifeline in the storm. My parents were appalled when they learned the full extent of Christopher's actions. Their unwavering support gave me the strength I desperately needed. We're here for you, Ava, no matter what, my father assured me one evening as I sat on the porch, watching Robert toddle around the yard. His innocent laughter was a reminder of what truly mattered. I made a silent vow to protect his happiness at all costs, no matter how difficult the road ahead. Christopher's return loomed on the horizon, but I was no longer the woman he had left behind. The pain and betrayal had hardened my resolve. I was ready to confront him, armed not just with the truth but with a plan to reclaim my life and secure a better future for Robert and myself. When the day finally arrived, tension hung in the air like a storm cloud. I had rehearsed this moment countless times, envisioning every possible reaction Christopher might have. Yet, as I heard his key turn in the lock, my heart raced. The door creaked open, and his voice echoed through the now unfamiliar space. Ava, I'm home, he called out, his tone casual as if nothing had changed. I emerged from the kitchen, my posture rigid and my expression unreadable. Welcome back, Christopher. We need to talk. He glanced around, his eyes narrowing as he noticed the changes I had made in his absence. What's going on? The house looks different. I didn't flinch. I sold the house, Christopher. It's no longer ours. His face twisted with disbelief. You did what? You can't just sell our house without telling me. I met his gaze, unwavering. It's my house, Christopher. And after what I discovered, I don't think you have any say in it anymore. His composure faltered, but he tried to regain control. What are you talking about? The affair, Christopher, I said evenly. I know everything. For a moment, he was speechless, his face betraying a flicker of panic. Then he scoffed, trying to brush it off. Ava, it's not what you think. I felt my anger rise but kept my voice steady. I think it's exactly what it looks like. You betrayed me. You betrayed our family. Christopher's shock morphed into anger. You're overreacting. We can work through this. There's no we anymore, Christopher, I said, my voice cold and firm. I've already filed for divorce. I handed him the papers, the weight of the moment sinking in. The ensuing conversation was a blur of accusations, weak apologies, and desperate attempts to shift the blame. But I stood my ground. The man I had once loved was gone, replaced by someone selfish and unrecognizable. As he stormed out of the house, vowing to fight the divorce, I felt a strange mix of liberation and apprehension. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life, but I knew the battle was far from over. In the following weeks, the reality of our separation became public. Christopher's parents, who had once been so confident and overbearing, found themselves caught in the crossfire. They tried to contact me, but I refused to engage. I had severed all ties with them, focusing solely on Robert and the legal proceedings. The day of the court hearing arrived with a heaviness that was hard to shake. Christopher sat across the courtroom, looking defeated, the weight of his actions finally dawning on him. As the judge granted the divorce and awarded me custody of Robert, a sense of justice washed over me. Christopher tried to plead for reconciliation after the hearing, but his words meant nothing to me. "You made your choice, Christopher. Now live with it," I said, turning away from him for the last time. The fallout from our divorce and the revelation of Christopher's affair rippled through his life. His reputation suffered, and the social circles his family once thrived in turned cold. Lily and Ethan, once so proud and judgmental, found themselves shunned by those who had once respected them. As I walked out of the courthouse holding Robert's tiny hand, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This wasn't just an ending, it was a new beginning. A fresh start for me and my son, free from deceit and manipulation. The future was uncertain, but it was ours to shape. Life after the divorce felt like stepping into the light after years in a dark tunnel. The house, now sold, was no longer a tether to painful memories. My focus shifted to rebuilding our lives and managing the coffee shop my family had nurtured for years. It became more than just a business. It was my sanctuary and a source of pride. Still, the shadow of Christopher lingered. One evening, as I was closing the shop, I heard a familiar voice. I turned to see Christopher standing there, looking disheveled and desperate, a stark contrast to the composed man I had once known. "Ava, please. I need to talk to you," he said, his eyes searching mine for a trace of the compassion I used to show him. I hesitated, conflicted by the sight of him. "What do you want, Christopher?" I asked, my tone guarded. "It's about the alimony and child support," he began, his voice tinged with embarrassment. I can't afford it. My job." I held up a hand, cutting him off. "Stop right there, Christopher. Your choices led you here. Robert and I won't suffer because of your mistakes." His shoulders slumped, but I refused to let him manipulate me with his remorse. The sight of him struggling stirred no sympathy, only a quiet resolve to keep moving forward. As I locked the shop and walked away, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. My life, my happiness, and Robert's future were no longer tied to Christopher or his family. This was our time to build something new, and I wouldn't let anything hold us back again. "I lost everything because of the scandal," Christopher said, his voice trembling. "And my parents, they're broke too." His words hit like a cold splash of reality. The man who once seemed untouchable was now standing before me, utterly defeated. I crossed my arms, keeping my expression neutral. "That's not my problem, Christopher. You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences." He took a shaky breath, his eyes pleading. "But Ava, I have nothing left. I'm begging you, for old time's sake." There was a moment, a fleeting moment, where I almost felt pity. His voice cracked, revealing just how broken he was. But then, the memories came rushing back. The lies, the betrayal, the nights I cried myself to sleep because of him. That brief pang of sympathy was drowned out by the anger and pain he had caused. "Old-time sake," I repeated, my voice sharp. "Those times are gone, Christopher. You should have thought about the consequences before you cheated, before you lied." I turned on my heel, ready to leave him standing there, but his next words stopped me in my tracks. "I'm sorry, Ava. Truly I am," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "I was a fool, and I ruined everything. Please help me." For a brief moment, I saw a glimpse of the man I had once loved. He looked vulnerable, regretful, even human, but the wounds he had inflicted were too fresh, the scars too deep. I couldn't forget how he had betrayed me, how he had turned my life upside down. "I'm sorry too, Christopher," I said, my voice firm but not unkind. "But I can't help you. You need to figure this out on your own." He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't wait to hear what he had to say. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, a shadow of the man he used to be. As I strode toward the warmth and safety of my home, I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. This was closure, not just the end of a chapter but the end of a story that had caused me so much pain. I had finally let go. The journey hadn't been easy. It had been filled with heartbreak, betrayal, and moments where I doubted myself. But it had also led me to a place of strength and independence. Life didn't stop, it moved forward, and so did I. Robert grew each day, his laughter echoing through the house and filling it with joy. His curiosity reminded me of the innocence and wonder the world still held. The coffee shop became more than just a business. It flourished into a place of warmth and connection, a hub for friends and community. Each morning, the smell of freshly brewed coffee was like a small reminder of how far I had come. As for Christopher and his parents, they faded into the background of my life, becoming distant memories. Their legacy was nothing more than a cautionary tale, a reminder of the damage caused by selfishness and betrayal. I no longer felt anger when I thought of them. Instead, I felt gratitude for the lessons they had taught me. The importance of resilience, the strength to stand up for myself, and the courage to move forward. One evening, as I locked up the shop after a busy day, I looked up at the sky. The hues of orange and pink painted across the horizon were breathtaking, signaling the close of another day. Robert reached for my hand, his tiny fingers wrapping around mine, and I smiled. "Ready to go home, buddy?" I asked, and he nodded with a grin. Our future wasn't perfect, and it wasn't entirely clear, but it was bright. With each step we took, I felt more confident in the path we were forging. It was a new chapter, a life built on strength, love, and the promise of brighter days ahead. As Robert and I walked home hand in hand, I knew one thing for certain. We were moving forward, and nothing would hold us back.